Hello, welcome to today's press review. We will be taking a look today at what analysts are saying about the latest blast in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. We will be joined later by Bushra Boyoub, political researcher from City University in London. But first, let's take a look at today's front pages here in the UK. The Guardian leads its front page reporting on new government papers which have revealed that Margaret Thatcher was secretly preparing to use troops on declared a state of emergency at the height of the miners' strike out of fear that Britain was going to run out of food and grind to a halt. It also reports on the passengers from the research vessel Academic Shukalski being rescued after the ship was stuck off the coast of Antarctica since the 24th of December. The Independent leads its front page reporting that vice-chancellors in the UK's top universities pocketed 8% pay rises averaging £22,000 sterling last year. It says that the average vice-chancellor's salary reached nearly £293,000 in 2012-2013. The paper also takes a look at the controversy surrounding BBC Radio 4 flagship news programme Today, which was guest edited by singer PJ Harvey. The Daily Telegraph leads its front page reporting that the ability to cope with the floods in England and Wales could be put at risk because of government cuts to the Environment Agency that will result in the loss of hundreds of frontline staff. The paper also features a picture of Nigella Lawson on the Good Morning America show talking about her new US food show and her recent fraud trial. Also from England, The Times leads its front page reporting on newly released documents which say that Libya threatened Britain the night before the policewoman Yvonne Fletcher was shot dead outside the Libyan embassy. It also reports on the Lib Dems' Lord Ashdown saying that trust in society's key institutions is crumbling into dust, and features a picture of Nigella Lawson, who said she resorted to chocolate to get through Christmas after her recent trial. And now let's take a look at the top stories in the Middle East. After yesterday's deadly blast in the southern suburb of Har Tahrir in the Lebanese capital Beirut, the second in less than a week, let's take a look at what analysts are saying. Jean Aziz writes for Al Monitor asking, was Thursday's blast in Beirut linked to Sidon attack? Aziz says that a security source told Al Monitor that 3 indicators suggest that the explosion that shook Beirut's southern suburb on Thursday afternoon might be linked to Lebanese army intelligence arresting a leading Al-Qaeda official, Saudi citizen Majid bin Mohammed al-Majid, in Lebanon. The writer adds that the unnamed source explained that the reasons for this belief were as follows. First, the attack came about 5 days after Majid's arrest and less than 48 hours after Saudi and US sources confirmed his arrest. Second, the explosion was likely caused by a relatively small bomb, not by a large car bomb. And third, the explosion happened on the edge of the southern suburbs, not its heart, 400 meters from the Palestinian refugee camp. Aziz says that those 3 factors, according to the security source, indicate that the party behind the explosion prepared the bomb quickly and that the car was booby-trapped in a hurry. There was not enough time for a large bomb to be prepared. More importantly, the urgency to commit the crime forced the car to be parked close to the place where it was likely prepared. That links the arrest of the Saudi terrorists who hid for a while in the Ain al-Helwi camp in southern Lebanon, with jihadist groups hiding in some Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon, and with the fact that the explosion happened near one of these camps. Aziz adds that all these indicators suggest that Thursday's explosion was a response by these groups to the arrest of the commander, or in the language of terrorist groups, the emir of the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Abdullah Azzam brigades, Majid, who is in a Beirut hospital. Aziz asks, but who was behind Thursday's explosion, which came as a possible response to the arrest of the internationally wanted terrorist? According to Aziz's source, the message seems to be intended for 5 parties. First to Hezbollah, second to Iran, and third to the Lebanese government, and fourth to Washington, which is leading the global war on terror and knows more than others the danger posed by the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Abdullah Azzam brigades, and fifth to Saudi Arabia, which apparently quickly requested that Majid be extradited to the kingdom, perhaps because he may be a black box containing serious information. Aziz says the man may have a treasure trove of secrets and some may not want that information to be revealed. So who will be open the alleged Saudi terrorist box of secrets? That question is worrisome to many, and that may explain why a message may have seen that that box should not be opened, a message in the form of Thursday's bombing in Beirut. The Daily Star features an editorial piece which reflects on the state of Lebanon amid the Beirut bombings titled Last Chance for Lebanon. The paper says that the cycle of violence that Lebanon is experiencing comes as no surprise to anyone and should be fully expected because of the lack of functioning state institutions to take responsibility for the situation on ground. The paper adds that Wednesday's bombs blast in Beirut's southern suburb is merely the latest reminder that whoever wants to destabilize Lebanon can exploit the country's sectarian divide to sow terror and even more tension and polarization. It says the formation of a new government is the top priority during this critical stage. President Michel Sleiman and Tamam Salam, the Prime Minister-designate, must be allowed to put into place a full-fledged executive branch of government that can shoulder the heavy burden of stabilizing the country and allowing it to move forward. It emphasizes that all political parties should put aside their differences and grievance and allow the President and the Prime Minister-designate to act. The overriding priority is to ensure the safety and security of people in Lebanon, and the caretaker government is politically unable to handle such a responsibility. And finally, it concludes that a new government is needed to act, and if political parties are unhappy with its performance after it has begun to function, they should take their case to the people through peaceful and democratic means. Lebanon is deteriorating on a daily basis, and no amount of wishful thinking or betting on outside developments will buy a little more time. It's time for someone to take charge. The Hamilton Spectator takes a look at the latest bombings, emphasizing the increasing sectarian tensions. The paper says that the bombing in the southern suburbs of Beirut is the latest in aggravating the soaring tensions between Sunnis and Shiite Muslims. Some fear the violence threatens to propel Lebanon into a full-blown conflict between the two sects. The paper adds that the bombing in the Shiite neighborhood of Har Tahrik, which is controlled by Lebanon's Hezbollah movement, followed the assassination of a prominent Sunni figure in a bombing in downtown Beirut on Friday, affirming an escalating pattern of retaliatory bombings in recent months. It continues, adding that the most recent bombings follows the arrest this week of the leader of a local Al-Qaeda affiliate. This latest attack was not as big as some of the earlier explosions, but it left little doubt that Lebanon's slide toward conflict is accelerating as the country becomes increasingly embroiled in the broader sectarian rivalries threatening to engulf the region. The article quotes Rami Khouri, head of the Issam Faris Institute at the American University of Beirut, and the columnist saying that Lebanon has become part of the wider regional confrontation, which is manifesting itself in these local bombings. There is open warfare between these two groups, though who is setting them off, we don't know. And joining us today on the show is Bushra Bouyou, political researcher from City University in London. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
An article featured in Al Monitor by Jean Aziz says today that a source in Lebanon alleges that the latest bombing could be linked to the attack on a Lebanese army checkpoint in Sidon on December the 15th. Do you think this is true?
Well, basically, I'm not in a position to identify the individuals or the groups behind this attack. But according to the indicators so far, it is more likely that all the recent attacks in Lebanon since the government stalemate are related, either the ones in the south or the north, in Shia or Sunni areas. The objective at the end is to destabilize the country of Lebanon, taking advantage of the present power vacuum to create a new reality that was impossible to realize through dialogue in the parliament.
And no one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. But what message do you think this latest bomb is trying to send, and to whom?
Well, the message is to clearly create a situation of terror in Lebanon, pressuring groups like Hezbollah and its allies, either in Lebanon or outside of Lebanon, for instance, Iran, to change their current policies towards Syria. Because, sorry, I forgot to mention that one of the reasons, I think, in my opinion, behind these attacks is the involvement of Hezbollah in Syria.
And do you think this attack will have an impact on sectarian tensions in the Lebanon?
Clearly, this attack creates tension among the Lebanese as a nation, and not only as a group of people, either Muslims, Christians, Sunni or Shia. I'm not someone who reads the tensions in Lebanon with a sectarian lens. Post-2005 created a new political reality in Lebanon. The organization of political parties has changed now. Lebanon has two major political blocs, March 14 and March 8. Both have political parties with different religious affiliations. For instance, March 8 has Sunni political parties as well as Christians and Shia. The same can be said for March 14. Most importantly, as well, it is important to mention that Hezbollah rapprochement which later translated to a solid alliance with the Free Patriotic Movement, is also, which is the largest Christian political party in Lebanon. It is basically the issue today is purely a political struggle of regional policies and not so much on national issues between those blocs that I've just mentioned, which I mean March 14 and March 8.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ms. Boyoub, for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to you.
That was political researcher Bushra Boyoub from City University in London, also author of The Free Patriotic Movement and Hezbollah Political Entente, a paradigm shift in Lebanese identity and state formation. Now let's continue our coverage on the Middle East. As the bloodshed in Syria continues, we will look at regional and international analysis of the situation on the long run. Raja Abdurrahim and Kandi Lanyan write an article in the Los Angeles Times titled "Foreign Fighters Answer Calls to Join Syria Conflict." By looking at individual cases, the writers observe the religious and personal motives driving foreign Islamists to fight in Syria, in addition to Al-Qaeda resorting to social media in its recruitment campaign. It was the summer of 2012 and the young Jordanian known as Abu Amr was working long hours as a teacher at a vocational high school. He had just bought an apartment and a car. He was interested in getting married. But just a few months later, he was making a long and dangerous 5-day trek with other foreign fighters through the mountains that separate Lebanon from Syria. The fighters said via Skype, "Personally, I saw that as Muslims, our religion was under threat," adding that his mother had encouraged him to fight. "My mother knew that if we died, it would be for the best way to die, protecting religion and Muslims." When he arrived in Syria's Homs province, Abu Amr was part of a trickle of foreign fighters. Since then, as the conflict has grown bloodier and the forces more entrenched, a network of recruiters, coordinators and smugglers has evolved and brought in thousands more fighters from many countries. US intelligence officers say Syria has become the biggest magnet for Islamist fighters since the Afghanistan war with the Soviet Union in the 1980s. "It's fair to say it's one of the top draws of recent history," said a senior US intelligence official who spoke on condition of anonymity. "It's a very steady increase and I expect that to continue as long as fighting there continues." The article observes a sophisticated recruiting campaign conducted openly on social media, including Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, which seem to have played a large role in drawing the estimated thousands of foreign fighters who have come to Syria to fight for two Al-Qaeda-linked rebel factions, Al-Nusra Front and the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and other Sunni Islamist groups. Ayman Jawad Tamimi, a Shilman Ginsberg Fellow at the Middle East Forum and a columnist at the jihadology.net, said, "In the age of social media, it's no longer that we have jihad videos put out on password-protected forums. It's very easy to put it out on open media, so it opens up it to a wider audience. And if the social media output is anything to go by, it's bigger than anything we saw during the Iraq War." The article also observes that view of a stark battle between Muslim sects is shared by many streaming into Syria, including on the other side, fighters from the militant Lebanese-based Shiite group Hezbollah, Shiite insurgents from Iraq and Revolutionary Guards members from Iran. Killing them is mandatory for us, more than killing infidels, said Abu Amr, who described Shiites and Alawites as apostates who had left Islam. We are ordered to create a caliphate to rule with God's law and protect Muslims' security and rights. Rami Khouri writes an article published today in Beirut's Daily Star. The article titles, "What the Middle East Holds for 2014." Khouri believes that a New Year's reflection on the past and coming 12 months is a useful exercise if it avoids predominantly egotistical ventures such as single-handedly anointing the best books, articles, tweets, documentaries or photos of the past year. More useful is to identify trends or developments to watch that may be genuinely new and perhaps also of continuing significance for the Middle East and the world. Khouri believes the longevity and lasting impact of current changes and turbulence across the region are hard to define today. This is because some developments are dramatic and very consequential in the short run, such as Islamists winning free elections or Salafist takfiris controlling areas in Syria, but may not have lasting impact in a year or two. Others, such as Arab Gulf countries experiencing budget squeezes amid changing global oil import patterns, are less dramatic now, but could be game changers in the years ahead. Khouri first mentions short-term issues that are exaggerated often through the lens of interpretation by local tyrants or global media. He adds, we are not heading into a Sunni-Shiite regional war because most ordinary Sunni and Shiite Muslims get along perfectly well. Khouri asserts Salafist takfiris will not control more land or play a long-term role in the region because they enjoy no significant popular support or viable political anchorage. As to Saudi Arabia, Khouri views the activism of the kingdom as striking and novel and deserves to be watched. In the past few years, the Saudi government has sent troops, money, military supplies and increasingly vituperative rhetoric flying around the region and the world, especially in Bahrain, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Iraq and Libya. This is unprecedented behavior for a country that has always conducted foreign policy discreetly, hesitantly and indirectly through middlemen and messengers. And finally, Khouri observes another change taking place, the balance of political threats between, on the one hand, pro-Israel lobby groups in Washington, D.C. that have long deeply influenced and often shaped America's Mideast policies, and on the other hand, the power of the American presidency and public opinion to pursue foreign policies seen to be the national interest of the US while also offering Israel ironclad American support and responding to the rights of Arabs, Turks and Iranians. This changing dynamic comes in the midst of the most significant test of will since the 1950s between pro-Israeli groups and an administration. Its resolution will impact important issues across the entire region. Dr. Mark Gopin, who sits on the Foreign Policy and Religion Working Group of the US Department of State, writes in the Huffington Post an article titled, "Ceasefire is the Syria word we need to hear." Gopin says a bloodbath of civilians, torture and murder of children, willful starvation of millions, forced displacement of greater populations such as the Middle East has never seen a global jihadi festival that is Syria today. In far less horrific environments, the world's major powers demanded ceasefire for warring parties, but not in the US. Gopin explains why. He adds, conscience demands it, but not geopolitics. War is a failure of imagination. The major powers are backing opposite sides in this war, as is well known, with Russia and Iran, the main allies of the Syrian regime, and Saudi Arabia, the government of Iraq, and especially Qatar backing the jihadi influx into Syria. To a tepid degree, the Western countries are backing the revolt and the opposition, not enough to win, but enough to refuse Assad any way out. By all accounts, it is a geopolitical stalemate. Gopin believes that this needs to change because we are bleeding the people of Syria to death and destroying the future of Syrian civilization. Unlike Lebanon and Bosnia, where enforced ceasefire and stalemate at least saved the innocent and the civilizations, this is a spiral of destruction that can benefit the future of neither the Alawites, the Christians, nor the Muslims of Syria. The Western powers are now hearing respected men like Ryan Crocker suggest that they have to get used to the reality that President Assad may have to stay. But that is not the way to stop the killing or end the stalemate. The opposition and the Gulf states, not to mention American leadership, can never accept the status quo. By contrast, the Russians and Iranians cannot accept the forcible removal of their ally and the rise of Sunni jihadi states that will surely plunge Lebanon into war and the Shiites of Lebanon into desperation, not to mention the destruction of non-Muslim minorities. And finally, Gopin emphasizes the need to hear the word ceasefire from the lips of major diplomats and strategists. The people of Syria will die without it, and everyone will gain something from ceasefire. Ultimately, history suggests that ceasefire leads to war criminals scurrying about from one humiliating position to another until they are gone from history. Let justice step aside for a few years. Seek justice for those innocent who are about to die tomorrow. Justice all will come eventually, not through the barrel of a gun, but through active non-violent consensus, building among major powers, civil society investment in the people of Syria and patience. Now let's take a look at the top headlines from international papers. Israel's Jerusalem Post leads its front page with the headline, "Kerry arrives with message, peace is not a mission impossible." The UAE's Gulf News leads today's papers with the headline, "Blast rocks Hezbollah's bastion in Beirut." And China's Global Times leads its front page with the headline, "Antarctic rescue succeeds." Finally, the Washington Post leads its front page with the headline, "National Security Agency aims to crack most online codes." For more updates, please visit levant.tv. That was it for today. We will be back with you Monday for another press review.